You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. If you're a news junkie or social media user, your feeds have likely been inundated lately with headlines and videos of immigration officers taking people into custody across our region. Like the story about federal agents arresting two people working to tame the Bear Gulch fire near Lake Cushman, or the arrest of a Washington National Guard veteran who has lived in the U.S. for decades, who was taken into custody during his citizenship interview. And we might see activity like this ramp up soon. Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, recently told reporters that Seattle and other cities with sanctuary policies will see more immigration raids. And we want to get a better understanding of ICE's activity in Washington so far and if we can expect that to change in the near future. To help us make sense of everything, I'm joined by Elizabeth Benki. She is the directing attorney of the Detained Immigrant Advocates Unit at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Can you quantify how much ICE activity has increased in our region? I mean, we have some data on this from the University of California, which has a deportation data project. And it found, this was reported by the Seattle Times, that the agency's arrests in Washington spiked in June and then dipped in July, but they were still relatively high compared to the past couple years. How much do we actually know about how frequent these arrests are happening?
Well, that's correct that there has been a significant increase in ICE activity in our state since January. I represent and provide information to individuals who are detained at the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma. It's a 1575-bed facility, one of the largest in the country. And just before the inauguration, the population of that facility was about 700. And shortly after the inauguration, the population about doubled to 14 or 1500, and it has held steady at very close to capacity or even briefly just over capacity since January.
And what kinds of tangible changes have driven that? Has been the major shift in how enforcement is conducted under the Trump administration?
Well, the Trump administration, has a narrative that they are deporting the worst of the worst, individuals with violent criminal history. But that simply is not the case. Like I said, my colleagues and I are at the detention facility every day. We're meeting with folks and, conducting intakes and informing individuals of what their rights are, of what their immigration relief options are. And the vast majority of individuals that we are meeting with do not have any criminal history. As you mentioned earlier, recently, two firefighters, actively working to keep our communities safe, have been detained. And so what we're seeing is ICE act in a way which is designed to, create fear in the community. But what I would like to do, as someone who works at the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, is to remind folks that, we've been here for 40 years, providing representation, impact litigation, advocacy, and information to our community members, and we will continue to be here doing this work.
I guess my question is how different is this from previous episodes where we've seen people talk big about immigration enforcement before, but this seems to be like a fundamental shift. And when you go to the detention center and you meet with people, what are some examples of how they came afoul of this system? Are these visa overstays? Are these people who cross the border without authorization? Like, who is the average person that is getting picked up in this ramped up enforcement regime?
Sure. So I would say the majority of folks who are getting picked up are doing exactly what the government asked of them, and yet they are being detained. For example, we're seeing, people detained at their ICE check-ins. And a few months ago, there was a significant ICE presence at the immigration court in Seattle and, many other cities across the country. But the presence of ICE at the courthouse just really instilled fear in the community. And to your earlier question, who are the typical individuals that we're seeing at the detention center? A large majority of individuals that we're seeing are asylum seekers. We are also, seeing at the detention center people who are visa overstays. Um, we are seeing individuals who already had pending cases, who had upcoming hearings, yet have been detained. Um,
And Elizabeth, so if somebody has a pending asylum claim, and we know that the Trump administration has put a halt to new claims, that system is basically ground to a halt, and new refugee status claims as well. But if somebody has like a pending asylum claim right now, are they still in danger of being arrested and deported?
It is a possibility. Essentially, our recommendation to the immigrant community is to be prepared as much as possible. Our organization is conducting monthly webinars that have Know Your Rights information on the many updates and changes that have been occurring. And we're providing those online as opposed to in-person meetings so that community members can feel safe in accessing that information. It's important for, any non-citizen to have a family safety plan. So if you have children, you want to identify a trusted adult who has, birth certificates of your children, has medical records, school records. So in the event that you are detained or deported, there's another individual who has that information. And think through, what you would like to happen if, in the worst case scenario, if you are deported, do you want your children to return with you to your home country, or do you want them to remain in the United States? And if so, with whom? Think about your assets. If you have a home, a car, a bank account, you want, again, a trusted adult to have information about that so that those things are accessible in the event that you are detained.
Do we have any more information about these firefighters who were detained with the Bear Gulch fire crews? These folks who were reportedly cutting wood, helping to assist the fire operations as part of a contract crew. I know 50 members of Congress signed a letter that was sent to the administration on Friday demanding answers about this. Congresswoman Emily Randall has tried to gain access to do congressional oversight to talk to these folks who are in immigration detention. Do you know anything more about who these individuals are or what's going on with their case?
Unfortunately, I don't. It has been very difficult to get information about them. I have the same information that you just mentioned. I believe one is represented, and the other is unrepresented.
Meaning, like, has a lawyer?
Exactly.
I know DHS had said on X that the two contracted work crews questioned on the day of their arrests, they were not, quote, this is a quote, not even assigned to actively fight the fire. They were there in a support role, cutting logs into firewood. The firefighting response remained uninterrupted the entire time. Now, that has gotten a huge backlash because people who know wildland firefighting know that cutting fire lines and cutting the fuel that the fire needs to spread is a really important part of firefighting activity and an important job of wildland firefighting. But if we don't have any more information about those two, I guess my next question is, when we see the reports on social media of ICE showing up in different parts of Seattle, I think as a news person, we can, see that and kind of use that as a jumping off point to say, okay, what are the facts on the ground here? Sometimes social media can be a tool of information, and sometimes it can be a tool of, creating undue panic or undue anxiety in the community. What are you watching for as you see these posts proliferate? Do you have any concerns about unnecessary fears, or do you think that they're an important tool to kind of alert people to what's happening right now?
I think it's really important for people to be informed about what the government is doing. And it's important for people to realize, as I mentioned earlier, that the narrative of the Trump administration is simply false, that immigrants are not that the entire immigrant community is not a public safety risk. And in fact, the tactics that the administration are using and the tactics that ICE are using, in fact, make us all less safe because there could be someone who is the victim of a crime, but is scared to go to law enforcement and report that crime because of all of this increased activity. People are scared to go to work. They are scared to take their children to school. And so all of those things, these tactics that ICE is using, make us all less safe. And I think it's important for people to remember that, although it seems that the administration has put a spotlight on, Seattle and Washington State, um, it's important to step back and recognize that there is a strong contingent of people in this community that support our work. There is a strong, community of people who value the diversity in our community. I'm happy to say that, we have received since the inauguration an outpouring of support, not just financial donations, but we have many individuals who are looking to volunteer with our organization as interpreters, translating documents. We have a very strong network of pro bono attorneys who are taking on cases. Um, and so, yeah, I just think it's important to remember that.
In the face of this increased pressure and strain on the resources of the immigrant advocate community, you're saying that you are seeing also a community response to support what Northwest Immigrant Rights Project is doing. Um, ICE got this big influx of money from the Big Beautiful Bill. There is the expectation the agency intends to hire 10,000 new officers. Are we seeing an impact of that yet, or is that yet to come?
As of now, I've taken a look at where, ICE intends to increase, detention facilities, and there aren't any in Washington State. As I mentioned, unfortunately, we already have a large capacity, for immigration detention. So as of now, it's wait and see.
Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was here recently. He said that Seattle and other sanctuary cities like Portland and parts of California, they're going to see more immigration enforcement activity, more raids in the near future. Do you have any anticipation of what that could look like, or anything to share about what Northwest Immigrant Rights Project is doing in response?
Yeah, I would say, this is a challenging time, and we're concerned that Seattle and Washington have been singled out. But I think this is something that we have endured before. We have many years of experience taking on difficult cases and responding to a variety of crises and different tactics by ICE, but we are increasing our outreach efforts, we are building capacity, and we are, continuing to represent our community members.
From a personal standpoint, you are dealing with this really huge change in the approach of the federal government. You're seeing a big jump in the people that you're trying to serve who are in immigration detention. What has it been like for you and other attorneys to respond to this?
It has been difficult. There's just a huge amount of change that, we need to keep up with as immigrant advocates. Sometimes it's emotionally draining work for immigrant advocates, but it's the hardest for the immigrant community, right? So, yeah, my colleagues are really amazing, and I'm fortunate to lead a team who cares deeply about the work and the community that we serve.
Elizabeth Benki is the directing attorney of the Detained Immigrant Advocates Unit with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.